Good evening and welcome to the March 10th, 2026 meeting of the East Long Meadow Town Council. I'll call the meeting to order and ask that we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You sit down.
Then I would ask that we take a brief moment of silence to reflect on all of the events going on, both here and abroad. Thank you. In accordance with Mass General Law, this meeting is being recorded by LCAT, and if there's anyone else in the audience recording, if you could identify yourself. No one on Zoom or in person. Public comments. Is there anyone in the public audience that wishes to make a comment this evening? I don't see anyone with their hand raised on Zoom or in the audience. Council comments. Are there any councilors with a comment this evening? No? All right. Town manager report. Hi, Tom.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
We'll start as usual, find the project report for the high school of the weeks of February 16th and 23rd of February. The pictures are still amazing, right? You're really starting to see all the details and finishes. The school's personality is really starting to shine through. I got the link on there, just a reminder, you can get all the scheduling and progress information, eastlongmeadowma.gov/ELHS building project. Kim, Rebecca, and I now met with all departments, and level 2 is just about all set to go. Jamie was our last victim on Monday. So I just want to thank all of our department heads and their staff for providing all the information and to make the process go as smooth as it does. It's a long few weeks, but I appreciate everybody taking the time to go through everything with us. So in the next week or so, we'll be just making minor adjustments and tweaks and in advance of the draft submission prior to April 1st. The winter that wouldn't end, as I sit here in a golf shirt. When we last met, we were coming off a winter storm that closed most of the Commonwealth. Interestingly enough, due to the declaration of the state of emergency by the governor, the Mass Emergency Management Association is conducting an initial damage assessment to see if the state qualifies for any federal reimbursements. All that information, luckily, is readily available. Bruce has all that data for every storm up to date, including that one, obviously. So I attached those sheets on there, which is kind of cool to see how much fuel gets used, the overtime hours, how much a storm costs. It is a pretty cool spreadsheet. So just numbers to back up sort of what we already know, that DPW has been extremely busy this winter and done an amazing job with all the cleanup. So thank you to the DPW once again. The local emergency planning committee met on Friday for a tabletop exercise in the fire department training room. Chief Beecher, who also serves as the emergency management coordinator, led us through the scenario of a multiple vehicle accident with chemical vapor release at the corner of Chestnut and Benton. Northeast winds, 12, 13 miles an hour, something like that. Just missed the high school right at 1 p.m. So it was Friday afternoon where the parameters, fire department, police department, DPW, health department, schools, and COA were on hand. Everybody giving input on what their roles would be in a certain scenario. We also had participants from Lenox, Carter-Munday, and East Long Meadow Skilled Nursing, which is on the corner of Maple and Dwight. So it was nice that they were there talking about what they might have to do in a situation like that. It was a good exercise and sort of demonstrated all the communication that is needed between so many people to handle any situation that may arise in town. So thank you to all that participated. The fire department held a recognition ceremony on February 27th to celebrate and honor the work and accomplishments of the men and women of the ELFD. Captain James Goldrick, Lieutenant Brody Allen, and firefighter Joe Giordano were recipients of unit citation awards, and firefighters Gianna Driscoll and Eli Yeager received distinguished service awards. 20-year service awards were given to Chris Beecher, Chief Beecher, Deputy Chief Linehan, our fire prevention officer Brian DePond, Captain Ben Cody, and firefighter Ed McCandlish. And last and certainly not least, firefighter Joe Giordano received his 25-year service award. So congrats to all, and thanks to everybody at the fire department for all you do each day for our community. That's it for the report for the evening. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Great, thank you, Tom. Does anyone have any questions? I don't have any questions. Just a comment though, based on the snow and ice report that Bruce prepared. I mean, first, thank you. It's nice to see that sort of level of detail from him. But just for the public's benefit, so far the total storm cost for this whole winter season has been about $493,000. So it's quite the testament on how much goes into all of that.
That's the reason we can run in the red.
All right, any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Any communications, correspondence, or announcements? We have no public hearings. So under orders of the day and licensing matters, our first is approve a change of manager for Mario's Cafe Ambiance at 60 Shaker Road from Karen Berard to Carrie Ann Monroe. Is there, if you're here, please come forward. Yes. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Carrie Ann Monroe, 38 Indian Spring Road, East Long Meadow, Massachusetts.
Great, thank you. The application seemed straightforward and is a pretty routine thing, but if you just want to provide an overview of what's changing for us.
So we're having a change in ownership because one of the owners passed away, so her daughter selling her shares to another person, Mary. So Mary and I are going to be working together. I'm going to be taking a more active role in overseeing the restaurant.
Great, makes sense. Does anyone on the council have any questions or comments? Okay, if there's none, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'm not ready.
Approve a change of manager for Mario's Cafe beyond 60, Karen Berard to Carrie Ann Monroe.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great.
Thank you.
Good to go.
Congratulations.
Okay, next we have approving a change of manager for Pride Operating LLC at 13 North Main Street from Sarah Fitch to Enrique Ernesto Su. Looks like they're on Zoom.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Hi. Sorry, let me turn on my camera. Oh, my name is Enrique Su. I am I'm taking over the location as the store manager after the previous managers left the company.
Makes sense. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Looked in order.
No, looks in order to me. Then I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve a change of manager for Pride Operating LLC, 13 North Main Street from Sarah Fitch to Enrique Ernesto Su.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the license fee review report from the licensing committee.
I'm up. Everybody got the handout that came in earlier today, I should say.
Yes.
So a few months back, Connor asked if the licensing committee would take a look at area license, alcohol license fees, their schedules, to make sure that we were at least competitive in the general ballpark with, our neighboring towns. So I asked Jackie to put feelers out to Agawam, Ludlow, South Hadley, East Hampton, Long Meadow, Wilbraham, Southwick, Munson, and Hamden, and to inquire as to their fee schedules. And so what you see before you are the responses from most of those towns. We unfortunately did not hear back and get any data from Hamden. However, our East Long Meadows, as well as the other towns I just listed, are there on the chart. I aggregated them and then took an average based on the information there. And you can see that in most cases, we exceed the average, not in any critical sort of way, except for perhaps the all alcohol license. The average was 1643, and we are at 2420. But all of the other categories, wine and malt, package store that is all alcohol, a package store that's just wine and malt, for clubs, for farm or breweries, and a one-day liquor license, we are very much in the neighborhood. So based on that, the licensing committee met on the 26th of February to review these and came to that conclusion that I just stated and recommended that the council adopt the current fee schedule for East Long Meadow for 2025, and that going forward, the committee would conduct a biannual canvassing of area communities again to make sure that we were in the neighborhood and keeping pace.
Great. Thank you. Any comments?
Questions?
Sure, Ralph.
Is this a proposed increase for East Long Meadow?
No,
Because
there are current,
then the fee schedule within our book is incorrect, because I've got it at 2,200.
and last September, we voted to move it to increase each category by 10%.
Okay, I just haven't received the updates then.
Okay.
The good book. That's no problem, I'll check into that. I would definitely agree then. It looks like we finally caught up to where
Yes.
we need to be, and
Competitive.
exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kathy. I would agree that they're pretty well in line and there's no reason to increase them at this time. But as you said, it's not as if we're like wildly above or below in any of the categories to
Correct.
our neighbors. Any other comments or questions?
Just one more, do we have a separate fee? So I know one of the meetings I missed in December, we voted to adopt mass law, which allows a beer and wine license to be converted to, yeah.
Oh, the conversion, yeah.
But again, so from what I understand, the state doesn't see it, quote unquote, as a conversion. Do we need to set something aside or a column that just says?
So they can
these are the
convert,
ones?
they can convert from wine and malt, or beer and wine, to all alcohol, correct?
Yes,
Oh,
and they're the same price, right? Wine,
package,
no,
no,
they're different.
they're a little more than double. So I think if they go to the next category,
They have to
the
pay the difference.
assumption is they will have to pay the differential. And
is that an assumption, or did we vote that
I
thought we-
don't, did we vote? I don't know.
I'd have to look back. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Well, I
At
think
the-
there was discussion about that they would have to pay the fee for the alcoholic.
There's only, if I recall, 3 establishments in that situation. And at the time, then Clerk Jeannie noticed all 3 of those establishments that, about the change, and offered them the opportunity to avail themselves of that. And there was no response from any of them saying they would go forward. Now, they still can do that in the future, but at the time, they were all satisfied with their status.
Yeah, the main reason I'm asking is I had received an email asking if our town had adopted that law.
We did, that we did.
If we created a fee schedule based on that. And I was like, I just assumed it would have been, hey, if you convert to all alcohol,
We definitely talked
it
about
would
that.
be, but again, I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't know if you guys.
That was in early December, correct? I know, I'm certain we adopted it.
Yep.
And there was discussion around if a licensee chose to move from that, their current category to the all alcohol, that the obvious new fee schedule would take over.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Tom.
Just want to, I did verify everything's been updated, you just don't have
I just don't have the paperwork, yeah.
so the fees were adjusted and they show on the code online. You don't have the updated sheets yet.
Thank you for
I
checking.
probably have them somewhere. They just haven't made it into it yet.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, good on that. So next, under financial matters, we have accepting the MSBA, which is the Massachusetts School Building Authority's Accelerated Repair Program Grant for Maple Shade Elementary School's partial roof replacement project, and voting to appropriate $2,894,260 for the purpose of paying those costs. Hi, Tom.
Hi. Gordon made it. I know you like to come up.
I'm just here for more.
Okay, all right. So I think everybody heard, we did make it into which we assumed, we did make it into the MSBA Accelerated Repair Program. I think the only thing that may be a tad confusing is the full appropriation, and that's because of this cash flow thing that we have going on with the reimbursements and when we get that back. So we really have to appropriate the whole thing. Last meeting, we talked about with all of sorry about the length of this motion, by the way, whoever has to read it. Moving all the money from projects that are completed and moving the balances into this project, we're only going to expend another $700,000 or so after all the reimbursement. However, we don't know the timeline, what that's going to look like. So we just have to appropriate the entire thing. It does say the word borrow in here, but again, we'll probably end up, depending on how the timeline falls, if we have to borrow, we would just borrow from ourselves, so we're not doing a ban and paying interest on anything. So that's really the gist of this novel of a motion that is about to be read.
And as you said, that borrowing from ourselves thing was what we had talked about at some previous meetings with the interest that we've made from free cash and other funds, so
Yeah.
there.
Anything to add?
No, I would also apologize for the length of the motion. Part of doing business with
Why
them,
don't you read it?
they like their language, they like disclaimers, I suppose, would be the best way to say it. But ultimately, getting a very beneficial grant with it.
Right.
If you work through the process, which takes a little time, as you know.
And so there'll just be, instead of doing a vote for free cash now, and then the bid comes back a little different, or the project's a little less or more, we'll do it when we need to do it, and we won't have to worry about doing more than one vote.
Excuse me.
Makes sense. Any other comments or questions before we?
Quick question, just timing of the project. Is it looking for like this summer?
So that's the hope. What they're working on now is getting all the bid documents out. If they can get it out by the end of March, early April, then we would be in the most competitive timeframe for summer projects.
Cool.
And so we should get better bids from contractors who had not filled their summer schedule yet. If we're delayed a little bit, then it becomes a little bit of a gamble. But with a roof project, you can conduct school. It's not the greatest, but you can conduct school while they're working on the roof.
Great. All right, motion time.
Happy to do it.
Thank you, John.
All right, here we go. I make a motion that the town of East Long Meadow appropriate the amount of $2,894,260 for the purpose of paying costs of the Maple Shade Elementary School partial roof replacement project located at 175 Maple Shade Avenue, East Long Meadow. The project will replace the existing PVC roof system, 38,100 square feet, with a new PVC system, including the payment of all costs incident or related thereto, the Maple Shade Elementary School partial roof replacement project, which would materially extend the useful life of the school and preserve an asset that otherwise is capable of supporting the required educational program, and for which the town of East Long Meadow may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, said amount to be expended under the direction of the East Long Meadow School Committee. To meet this appropriation, $653,327.87 shall be reappropriated from a portion of the amounts borrowed on September 27, 2018, to pay the costs of the Meadowbrook School windows and doors replacement project. So that's $312,611.93. The Meadowbrook School modular classroom replacement project, that is $340,630.56. And the Maple Shade School interior and exterior door replacement project, $85.38, which projects are complete and for which no liabilities remain. $126,114.25 shall be reappropriated from a portion of the amounts borrowed on February 22nd, 2022, to pay the costs of the Meadowbrook School replacement project, which is $23,271.94, and the Maple Shade School steam pipe replacement project, which is $102,842.31, which projects are complete and for which no liabilities remain. $39,531.97 shall be reappropriated from a portion of the amount borrowed on November 12th, 2020 for the Maple Shade internal and external replacement project, which project is complete and for which no liabilities remain. And finally, $256,400 shall be reappropriated from a portion of the amount allocated on January 28th, 2025 for the feasibility study and initial schematic design to replace the flat sections of the roof at Maple Shade Elementary School. And treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to borrow $1.18,885.91 under MGL Chapter 44 or pursuant to any other enabling authority. The town acknowledges that the MSBA's grant and program is a non-entitlement, discretionary program based on need as determined by the MSBA, and any project costs the town incurs in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of East Long Meadow. Provided further that any grant the town may receive from the MSBA project shall not exceed the lesser of 56.48% of eligible approved project costs as determined by the MSBA, or 2, the total maximum grant amounts determined by the MSBA. The amount of borrowing authorized pursuant to this vote shall be reduced by any grant amount set forth in the project funding agreement that may be executed between East Long Meadow and the MSBA.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded.
A lot of numbers moving around.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Connor, just to confirm,
Yes.
$1,818,885.91.
Yes, correct.
I know it was 1.8.
I might have phoned.
But just for clarification,
It's a lot of money.
it's a lot of money.
That is correct. Okay, motion was made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? I don't know that we need to, but just for safety, we'll do a roll call vote. Jim?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Awesome.
Great news.
Thanks, Gordon. Great job. Thank you.
putting that project together, and hopefully it'll be underway before we know it. Okay. Moving down. Next on the agenda under financial matters is establishing an energy credit stabilization fund. I'm sure Tom will have more details, but this was something that he had talked about, I think, at our last meeting when we did the broad overview of the budget projections over the next 5 or 10 years or so, and relates to the new high school building and how those increased energy costs may be offset here.
Yeah, so with the, maybe you can help me out with some of the numbers, but with the new, the construction of the new high school, we ended up somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.4 million in rebates from National Grid. And so we want to create a stabilization fund to sort of offset both the increase in the electric bill, as you can imagine, is quite steep in the budget this year based on a 100% electric building. And the time it's going to take for solar, for the solar voltaic to take away, it's like 30% of the, somewhere in the 30% range of that electric bill. You know, we talk about this a lot when we're setting up the budget about these increases, that we have this small amount of money that we can increase the budget every year. And an increase like this will be easier for us to take a little money into the budget out of the stabilization fund to sort of limit the impact on the budget, certainly in the first year. Second year, we hope to have the solar array lit up. I think we got an email today from the design team that they finally accepted our application. I've been getting an email a month for the last 6 months saying that our application was in jeopardy of being canceled. But we're through that piece of it. Now it's just going to be whatever the process is to build and then come online. So this provides a place for this rebate money to go that you can appropriate into the utility account to sort of ease our way into this big increase of an electric bill that we're going to get from the new high school, essentially.
And I think your thought process was that once that's depleted, we would essentially remove this fund too.
We could just totally, we would put all the money back into the, general fund reserve or wherever you would like to, but we could do away with this account if we don't see any need for it anymore.
Any comments or questions, Ralph?
Do we have a rough idea on time frame once the school's built? Are we looking another full year before the solar is installed?
Do you have any?
The solar panels and the system will be ready. It's really waiting on National Grid's timeframe
To connect?
activate it. And so
within 5 years. National Grid.
going with the experience of Skanska and Fontaine and so forth and other projects, it can be 6 months to 2 years.
So,
But they'll have it ready to go.
Right, okay.
so we'll do a little, we'll make some phone calls behind the scene to try to keep things moving as fast as possible. But again, this takes, it takes time. It's a process. We aren't the only array that's probably trying to go online and on top of everything else. So thankfully we have this rebate money that we can sort of help ourselves ease into the cost.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea to help offset it so it's not one big increase that then you'd be used to it after the first year, but it's a lot to chew in the first year, but this will ease us into it. Any other thoughts or questions?
Is this just going to be for the electric bill?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
According to them, zero.
Yeah, they processed the email said they processed it in 0 days. Promise you it's not true.
If there's nothing else, I'll entertain.
It must be true.
This took 6 months.
Rita?
I know, right?
I'm not as efficient.
I make a motion that the town council vote to establish an energy credit stabilization fund. All energy credits and related revenue received in connection with the new high school and natatorium project constructed in partnership with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, shall be deposited into the stabilization fund. Any appropriation from the stabilization fund shall require approval by a 2/3 vote of the town council. Funds may be used to offset amounts equivalent to this estimated generation of net metering credits expected from the installation of solar panels at the high school until such time of those panels are installed and fully operational. In addition, funds may be used to mitigate budgetary impacts resulting from increased electricity costs associated with operating a fully electric building. The town treasurer shall serve as custodian of the fund. The Department of Public Works, in coordination with the town manager, shall have authority to expend funds in a manner consistent with this vote and applicable law. Any interest earned shall remain and become part of the fund.
Second?
Motion was made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote as well. Jim?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And John? Yes. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got those votes that came in with
Okay.
the MSB one.
Next was just the quick update on the FY27 budget process. No real update in terms of like numbers or anything this evening, but I think since the process worked pretty well last year, we'll follow that same process this upcoming budget year, and we'll hold the joint meetings in case any other counselor wants to attend, and I plan on keeping the same committee members, assuming they're willing to serve and meet again. It seems like between Kim and Tom, they have most of the information prepared, so we'll have I don't know if we'll have the full presentation in advance of our first April meeting, but we will definitely have a budget presentation at our next meeting to kind of start introducing some of the topics, so a little earlier than usual. And then we'll be ready to go for April.
April, super.
A rough draft, we'll call it.
Yes, the rough draft before the.
So I would ask that you as president reach out to the committee members, because I know one of them will not be able to continue on, so.
Good to know, yeah.
Oh, boy, we find a replacement.
I will reach out.
I think it's done. I think.
Okay, next we have approving our February 24th, 2026 open session minutes.
I make a motion to approve the February 24th, 2026 open session minutes.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next under old business, we have the 250th anniversary. I did some looking into the shirts that we had talked about at one of the last meetings. It seems like the general price range is about $50 each, depending on how far we want to take it. If we just wanted like a generic colored shirt, or if we wanted to have it like with the town seal or saying town council or something like embroidered on the polo shirt or similar. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are on that.
I don't get to wear one.
Well, it doesn't change over until after the.
The 4th of July.
Be fine with something like town council and maybe like,
Didn't hear what you said.
like something like just town councils. Doesn't need to be anything grand.
And it's got to be huge.
In the past,
Huge.
back early in our inception as a council, we did have shirts that had the seal and then underneath town council.
That would look good.
Yeah.
I think that would look nice.
Do we have a color preference on shirt, like bright white, red, or blue? It seems like it's just solid colors that I could find, but
I don't know, maybe red or white, that's kind of like.
I would say red.
yeah.
That was the color of the other one, was red.
All right, I'll put together a sample and we'll have something to look at.
Thanks, Connor.
Great. Anybody have anything else for the anniversary topic so far?
Not really much. I
Yeah.
have a meeting tomorrow, so naturally.
We'll have something to talk about next.
We have some sort of placeholders for the time capsule, which is kickoff will be on May 30th at the Norcross House. I think it's like 1 to 3 or something, and I'm sure we'll have some dignitaries and me. And then we're gonna try to, following Saturday, try to do something at Brown Farm similar to Oktoberfest, as another 250th sort of celebration kind of day, in which the capsule will probably be there. We're still trying to lay out the legalities of what we're going to allow in the new time capsule and how to sort of write that down so we're not being sort of discriminatory in any way, but also keeping it clean. So we're kind of going through that, but those two back-to-back Saturdays for now. And obviously the parade committee and Rotary Club have been marching along their same timeline, putting in tons of work to be ready for the 4th, so.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Have we thought about any numbers to put towards the celebration? I know I was talking with, for the CPC, I know the Historical Commission had gone to them, hoping to get some money or whatever for one of the floats for the parade and for a few other things. And obviously, CPC told them, well, you can't use up these funds for that. And so my thought was our celebration account that we had talked about, and I just wasn't sure if we had put any numbers to it or if we had thought about it at all as far as who it would support and what would it.
Yeah. If you don't mind.
Of course.
So I had mentioned an amount last time, I think, but I do hate asking you for money in generic amounts. So that's why we have no appropriation yet. As we start getting some more of this information and what things are going to cost, then we'll get to that. But that was one of the things I thought of, that I think some of the money got given by CPC and then some not. So certainly in support of our commissions and boards and departments and council, and I think those are going to be things that will end up on that tally, pay from that account. At least that's my opinion.
One of my thoughts was just that, obviously, the 4th's going to come up in a blink of an eye.
Oh, yeah.
And committees and all, or who's ever going to use some of the money, doesn't know how much they can or can't spend. It makes it really hard to plan. You know, whether they want a huge float or a little float or a wagon. And again, that's just some thoughts, and obviously you're in touch with a lot of the committees and all, so I just wanted to throw it out there and just.
How much do you guys want to spend on your float?
That's a good point. I suppose we didn't necessarily think about like total amounts or ballparks anyway, in terms of like all the different departments or activities. You know, individual ones, I suppose I'm less concerned about, as long as it's like group wise under the total threshold. I don't know what we're thinking. Maybe.
We're thinking of putting it towards the next meeting so that we can
Yeah.
think about it.
That's a good thing to think about.
Yeah.
I would definitely more than a couple $1,000s, but nothing is crazy. I'm thinking it's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that was sort of the placeholder in our little calculation that we did to try to get down to 8% or whatever we had. But I wouldn't anticipate probably spending that to that amount. But again, we don't really have a lot of the details yet. And so you're right.
Hurry it up and wait.
Well,
That's really,
Yeah.
because you don't know, so, again, it's just keeping things going in the back of your mind.
It'll probably be that intersection too between like, we'll have a better idea on the range when we see what some of the ideas are, and then we can kind of whittle down what we're
yes.
into or not. Great, so more to come at the next. Next, under old business, we had the transfer station waste oil tank replacement update. So I know from our last meeting when we talked about it, we had some questions and more research, and I think Tom had some.
I had a
opportunities.
conversation with pretty much everybody from DPW in the last 2 weeks because I couldn't remember the exact questions. So I'll go in no particular order. The old tank was about 1,000 gallons. So I think if we do it, we go to the larger tank. It really, Daryl said he could really only remember a time when it got emptied more than once in a year. That might be because it was leaking. No, I'm just kidding. So the impact of on the budget is not going to be enormous. It'll be the initial sort of cost of the tank, putting whatever foundation we're going to put underneath it, which when we pull our permits with DEP will most likely just be a slab on grade because they don't want us digging into the cap. Signage, whatever DEP is going to require for placarding and instructions, and then we're just going to have to work it operationally. There may be a scenario where when you come with oil, you have to pull up and wait for the attendant for a few minutes while he gets the line down and then goes over whether we decide to test on site, which will, be a few $100 more of maybe equipment if we're going to test to make sure we're not accepting hazardous materials in the oil tank. As we've been talking about this, I've gotten input from more than a dozen residents that would like to see this come back. So I think people have gotten used to the fact that they could go to their transfer station and get rid of their oil. And it's probably a thing that we should put back.
Anything else, Ralph?
So do we need to take a vote to approve the purchase, at least the cost for the purchase of the tank? Because that's probably going to take a bit.
So
Or do you want to wait and find out a rough cost on putting the slab in and everything?
which we have, I think the tank was good, like 16 to the site. $3 or $4 grand to form and pour a pad, signage. Why don't we, the reason I didn't have an appropriation was because I'm wondering if we can do it with our existing budget. Whether Bruce has some money that in a line item that he didn't spend that we can transfer. And then I have some money in my reserve account. And I think we can get it done with FY26 budget instead of putting it in the next one, certainly. But if there's a need for some sort of free cash transfer of some amount, we got to kind of go, we're still in March, so it's kind of hard to say that this account is going to have money left in it at the end, because it may not. So I'd like to wait a little bit longer to see if we can afford it in this budget.
We need to at least vote on whether or not we want to direct him to put it back there.
It doesn't hurt to do that, so we're all
I
on.
think that was the general consensus last time, and that's why you went on it, but
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to.
And what do you think the total price tag for putting it back would be? If you were to guess.
22. Because most of it will be our labor. So it's just going to be the tank to get it to the site, which was like 16.5, concrete another 4, $2 grand for signage, supplies, miscellaneous. So somewhere in there.
And didn't we ask how much it costs per year to like maintain it?
Yeah, like the disposal and the
The
inspection and
disposal of the
stuff.
oil.
Yeah,
I had to
and
figure that out.
no, because it changes all the time, and they really don't have any of the records, like how much it costs to get rid of the oil, and it would change every time, because every time they tested it, it wasn't just oil. So there's really no good data, no. But if we can monitor what goes in, we'll only be paying to remove waste oil, which will be considerably cheaper. Not to mention, in the existing expense budget at the transfer station, as we're looking at the up-to-date numbers, the staffing of the place with DPW employees has saved us a ton of money. Some of our haulers have asked why we haven't been getting more dumpsters, and it's because we're actually watching what goes in the dumpsters and not allowing things that don't go in there. So I think we shouldn't really have any problem with any operational increase in operational costs. It'll just be this initial cost to put it down, and that'll be that.
And then just one.
Sure.
For someone who would never bring their oil there, because I don't.
Where do you bring your oil?
Anywhere. Wherever Perron puts his oil is where it goes. How much is it? How much would it be to get rid of I mean, can you find out? Because I know you probably don't know. Maybe you know this. To get rid of the, is it we just say 1,000?
I think the biggest one on this one was like 560, 530.
Just kind of get them an idea of how much it costs just to get rid of the oil.
Okay.
If it's clean oil,
Yeah. Yep. So I missed the question.
Sorry, just to get an idea.
It's fine.
Thank you.
Yep.
I say sell it and make money off of it.
Well, if it's clean, we'll burn it in the garage.
That's the other
There you
thing.
go.
There you go.
We can reduce DPW's budget for heat.
Great. Any other comments or
So I would
thoughts?
say we just delay until we actually get that
Yeah.
Yeah.
information.
Thank you.
Works for me. Okay. Next, under old business, is an update on the local election ballot questions that we have for our June 2nd local election. So we very expediently got the Attorney General's opinion back on our charter amendment question. So I think we're good to proceed now with Jesse to figure out the language that we can put on the ballot, but at least it's really just at local control at this point, and we're not waiting on the state to let us do it. And then as far as the non-binding marijuana question, I know it seemed confusing in the packet getting an old ballot from 2023 as a sample, but that was,
Our MLP vote.
but that was one of the most recent ones that we could find where we had a non-binding question on a local election ballot in town. So that was just showing a format that we could use to copy, should we put the marijuana question back on the ballot. So I think at that point, we're really just working through some of the details with Jesse on how we can phrase some of that, but I think at least we know what the format would be. Everything would really be under a section header called ballot question. It wouldn't be broken out into like different ballot question sections. It would just be like question 1, probably the charter question, question 2, and then only under question 2 or so would it say like a yes vote is non-binding, a no vote is non-binding, and so forth.
Which he did confirm the law hasn't changed since that point, so we're good to go there.
Perfect. So hopefully in the next couple meetings or so, I don't know if we'll have time to have it ready for next meeting, but definitely by the end of April, we'll have stuff that we can vote on to have our ballot squared away.
So through the chair, Connor,
Sure.
can you, when we talk to our attorney,
Absolutely.
ask him to, how do I want to say, attempt to word the question in a little bit easier terminology, because last time for the charter change, no one understood it.
Right.
Absolutely.
I will be truthful. I read it 3 times and I didn't understand it, and I was the one submitting it. So I think the language has just got to be adjusted somewhat out of attorney language and into normal citizen language, because it doesn't do any good for us to submit a question that no one understands.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're voting on, and that's not good for anyone.
Oh, I completely
We
agree.
could encourage him to do a better job with the language. That would be awesome.
I work on that, because I agree, it was hard that we couldn't put like the whole paragraph and show what was changing, but if you don't include enough of it and it was just boiled down to the 1 or 2 sentences, it didn't really make any sense what we were asking for.
Did Judy send out
Yes.
like a postcard last year?
Yes, once we have the actual language that would appear, then she had sent out a postcard, because for charter question specifically, it has to go to all registered voters in town.
And then on that, does it kind of, it gives the language, but does it explain it?
I don't
Is there
remember
a way
what
to
it's.
do that, or is that like,
Might not,
Yeah.
enough room on a postcard size mailer.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, we might be able to, depending on the format of the question, if we can explain like what a yes would do versus what a no would do.
Right, and
But I
maybe
think
in
whatever we
bullet
put
form,
on the
just-
ballot tends to
yeah.
have to be very similar. I don't think we can deviate too much between the postcard and what.
is there anything we can put like in the reminder?
Yeah.
We might be able to come up with like our own op-ed or something and try to
Just to
explain it
say,
more.
this is what it is, and this is what it means.
Right,
So people don't think that they're voting for something that they're not.
yeah, and we could probably do something with LCAT too.
Yeah, and like maybe like Facebook, you know what I mean? Get it
Yeah.
out there so people actually understand it.
Educational.
Exactly. That's a good idea. I'm sure
Yeah,
thankfully we have some time to work on that.
Okay.
But absolutely.
Jamie's in.
Great. So next, under new business, we had a presentation by VHB on the Centertown District massing.
Yeah, so I think you can, we'll have Luke Mitchell here from VHB to go through the project. We had gotten some grant funds to do some massings to provide some visuals on some of the, recognizable parcels in town. I think you'll recognize all the spots to sort of show what some developments would look like. Both with, I think, a comparison between existing zoning and what a new zone would look like. Now, in all honesty, this was based on the old language, because this process started 4 or 5 months ago, that was withdrawn. So you'll have to use your imagination a little bit, depending on where we end up landing. But Luke's got some great visuals here to kind of get a feel for what some of that future zoning could look like on some of our parcels in town. So without further ado, hey, Luke.
Over there.
Hey, how are you? Can you see me and hear me?
We can.
The above.
Okay, great. Then the next test is, can I share my screen? So let me try to do that.
And while you're doing that, we just have one thing.
Okay,
Great.
my son worked at VHB for a number of years. He's no longer there, but his wife is still there. She's a air quality control engineer, civil engineer, and I don't think she had any involvement with this particular application, but I just needed to disclose that I have that connection.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome.
The utmost.
Okay, excellent. Can you all see this?
Yes.
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 Okay, great. So, as Tom said, I've been working closely with the planning director and the deputy town manager over the past few months to assess, in a way, help visualize this proposed center town zoning mixed-use bylaw. So it's a proposed zoning change that would allow multifamily development in a pretty significant portion of the town center where multifamily is not currently allowed. So the zoning change would also update dimensional standards as well as parking requirements throughout the district. So we were asked to review how this proposed rezoning would impact the district and what type of development opportunities it would unlock in the properties that are located within the proposed district. It wasn't so much an exercise of evaluating the relative merits of the proposed rezoning, but rather an exercise in characterizing the impact that the rezoning would have on these properties, and to sort of visualize the type of development that could emerge and compare that development with the type of development that could emerge given the existing zoning. So really it's a comparative exercise. This is what's possible in these properties given the current zoning. And if the rezoning were to pass, this is what would be unlocked. This is what would become possible. So that's the sort of gist of the exercise that we've done here. Here's a quick agenda. I'm not going to take too long on the slide deck. I'll try to get through it so I can answer any questions, but start on the planning context. What are the current conditions within the proposed district area? Why the rezone? What's the purpose of the rezoning? Taking a closer look at the existing zoning and the proposed district. And then what we've done is we've focused on 6 opportunity sites. There are the number of properties within the proposed district numbers in the triple digits. So we didn't get the opportunity to look at every single one of them. What we did was we identified 6 parcels that ranged in size and location and things like that, so that we could get a more visceral sense of what the rezoning would really do to these sites. So these are the sites we looked at: Stacy's Dry Cleaners, Romito's, Golden Years, an existing single-family home in the south of the district, the Carlin Building property, and the Steve Graham Acquisitions property. So I'll walk at a high level through those. First, on current conditions, here's some aerial screenshots from up high that show you the type of urban fabric that you have in the proposed district now. So what we can see here is that you find an urban form that is very segregated between residential and commercial uses, right? Which is very typical of the period during which most of these properties were built out. And segregating land uses like this from a planning perspective has certain impacts that are well chronicled. For example, people end up spending more time in the car, and you end up with a big visual impact from space that's used for driving and for parking, which can really be seen in all 3 of these photographs. Lots of space dedicated to vehicular infrastructure. So segregating uses like this also means that the neighborhood is, generally speaking, less walkable, which you can also detect from these photos. And the only other thing I draw your attention to on these photos is that there doesn't really appear to be a strong spatial or visual connection between the different properties represented in the photos. From the perspective of urban design, placemaking, connection and connectivity is a fundamentally important piece of that. So one could say that that's a gap in this district, looking at these photos. So why rezone? This is language that comes directly from the proposed zoning bylaw. So I'll just read it out loud because there's a lot of words on the screen. I won't ask you to read it yourself. First is to allow for greater variety and flexibility in the development of housing types integrated with business and commercial uses. Second, to generate positive tax revenue. That's a good thing, right? For the town, while providing the opportunity for new business growth and additional jobs. 3, reduce vehicle trip miles by providing services within walking distance of the residential units. 4, to promote the efficient use of land and existing parking supply and limit the expansion of surface parking, which we saw in the photos, by encouraging shared parking. That's another piece of the proposed bylaw. 5, provide additional housing with the goal of maintaining housing accessibility. 6, promote a vibrant community core. And 7, promote the preservation of open space, which you'll see is also baked into the proposed bylaw. So here is the existing zoning map. Outlined in black is the proposed district. So as you can see, currently the properties that inhabit this proposed site occupy 3 different zoning districts. One is the business district with 74 parcels shown here in pink. Another is the industrial district with 77 parcels shown in purple. And the third, not very well represented within this area, but that's the commercial district. There's 8 parcels total. So that's what's out there now. It's about 160 parcels total. Here is a slide. Again, lots of information on here. I'll try to simplify it at a high level. What this shows is the dimensional requirements in gray that exist out there today. And then at the bottom in blue, that's the proposed rezoning's dimensional requirements. So starting at the left, you have the front setback. The current setbacks that you find out there in your existing zoning are deep, 25 feet minimum for the business district, 25 feet minimum for certain types of development in the industrial district, and 50 feet back from the street for other types of development in the industrial district. The proposed rezoning would only allow up to 15 feet. So in other words, you're going to take your buildable area and pull it much closer to the front of the site. You have a max setback instead of a minimum setback. The next two columns are the side setbacks and the rear setbacks. There's some degree of setbacks baked into the existing zoning. The proposed rezoning would reduce that to 0 feet on the side and the rear. Max lot coverage isn't really comprehended in the proposed rezoning. So in the existing zoning, there's a cap on how much of the lot can be covered by development. That goes away in the new proposed zoning. Maximum density of residential units. Of course, that's not included in the current zoning because multifamily housing isn't allowed. The proposed rezoning would allow up to 15 dwelling units per acre, which is a relatively modest density, but definitely it allows for some appealing development opportunities for investors. And just to finish it off, minimum open space, 10% is the requirement of the proposed zoning. And max height, 45 feet, which is more or less in keeping with what you see in the existing zoning. So you're not seeing a big jump in the allowed height. So sorry, a lot of information there, but it's all in the proposed bylaw, of course. So here's just a quick slide on the density bonuses that are also an important part of the proposed bylaw. So the proposed Centertown district will allow up to 15 units per acre, as I said, but if proponents will do any number of 3 different things, then they can unlock additional density. So if that could include an affordable housing. So for every affordable unit that they plan in a market rate development, they get 0.5 additional market rate units per acre. So in other words, they can build a little more density if they include some affordable housing. The second tranche is shared parking. So for every shared parking space planned, you get 0.25 additional units per acre of developable space. And then the third is open space. So if you include more open space in your proposed project, then that also unlocks additional density. You have a maximum overall cap of your density at 20 units per acre. So, there's a lot of details in there. The basic gist is this, that if your proposed project includes things that benefit the community, you get a little bit of extra developability out of your parcel. It's increasingly common across the Commonwealth. You see provisions like this in a lot more zoning these days. Okay, so here's the proposed Centertown district. There's a requirement that 10% of non-residential ground floor is required. In other words, this is calling for mixed use for retail space on the ground floor. We have some thoughts on that one. Mostly that should only be applied, if at all, to large parcels within this area. If you have a very small parcel, you're only going to be able to develop 1 or 2 units of housing. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to require that a development like that should set aside space for retail. So I think that was the one thing that we picked up on that we really kind of take issue with. And then at that, even for the larger parcels, this could really be a deterrent for developer interest because of the fact that you're going to require that mixed use. But I'll keep moving. If anybody wants to talk more about that, happy to do so after I get through the slide deck. So allowed uses, multifamily residential buildings, and in addition to other uses which are already allowed within these districts. Okay, on parking, residential 1.25 spaces per unit is the requirement. Then with some additional considerations for other types of uses, which I won't go too far into now. So taking a look at those 6 opportunity sites that I mentioned, here's the map, and here are those sites outlined in red and highlighted in yellow. As I said, they represent a variety of scales. Some are smaller, Some are larger, some are located in the business district, some are located in the industrial district. Okay, so I'm going to walk through each one of them one by one, starting with Stacy's Dry Cleaners. This is an example of a very small site, 0.18 acres, located in the business district. Here's an axonometric view of the existing conditions on the site. You have a vacant building out there surrounded by a parking lot. So this is an image that shows the redevelopment scenario under the current zoning. As I mentioned, you have really big setbacks on a property like this. And what you'll find on many sites in the district, including this one, is that the actual setbacks, which by the way, it's a non-conforming site. If you look at the existing building out there, it's right in the middle of the front yard setback. But what you'll see is that if somebody were to purchase that site and eliminate the building and try to build something new, they'd be really hard strapped to do that without seeking a variance, because those setbacks, the front setbacks, affects two sides, and you really end up eliminating most of the site from what's developable. So in other words, to put it simply, the site's current zoning and setbacks don't allow enough space for any type of development out there. So interesting to see that this wasn't the only site like that, by the way. So given the proposed zoning, I'm just going to click through a few different scenarios. One thing that could be built is a duplex that you see here. Given the size of the parcel, 2 units would be allowable, and that could be arranged as a duplex, for an example. Scenario 2, 3 units built as townhomes. This would be relying on the density bonuses to get to that third unit that could be allowable given the proposed rezoning. And a third scenario, this is just a different configuration of 3 units, less common these days, but a classic New England triple decker that could be built under the proposed rezoning on the site. Moving over to Romito, which is almost an acre in size, and in the very unique building that you see out here, which is also vacant, and which clearly served a very specific purpose when it was active, and it was designed accordingly. So this is what you see out there. Now it's a 4,700 square foot building, currently vacant. This is what's possible under the current zoning. You have those wide setbacks within the parcel, but of course multifamily is not allowed. So you would need to build something commercial, like an office building, for example. And so this is an example of what you could build: 4,000 square feet of office space and parking along with it. Under the proposed rezoning, here's one scenario: you could build up to 14 units of housing. And this is represented at 3 stories in the image. But that would be a building footprint of around 7,300 square feet. And this would allow plenty of space for parking as well as open space. So that would be the 12-plex and the duplex that you see here. So this is just one potential outcome of the rezoning. Second scenario, this is using the density bonus mechanism. A proponent could build a 17-plex apartment building as well as that duplex on Elm Street to develop 19 units of housing. And again, that's the max that would be allowable under the max density. And here's a third scenario, which is a mixed-use 12-plex apartment building with ground floor retail as well as that duplex on Elm Street. Again, that 15 dwelling units per acre, even with the density bonuses, isn't going to max out these sites. On a site like this, you'll still have plenty of space for open space and things like that. So moving on to Golden Years, which is a 0.29 acres site. Currently, you have a 7,800 square foot building footprint, which occupies almost all of the site. And last we checked, the building was currently for sale. So again, another underutilized property. Under the current zoning, This is what you could build. Those 25-foot setbacks on Prospect Street and Shaker Road would only allow for a small portion of this site to be developable, again, without some type of variance. And again, the same condition here, the existing building is non-conforming with the underlying zoning. If a proponent was to develop something here, could it be multifamily, which is prohibited, would need to be an office building or something like that, set back in a very significant way from the street. Under the proposed zoning, here's one scenario of 4 townhomes that could be built on site with the associated parking and a decent amount of space set aside for open space. So only 32% lot coverage. With the density bonuses, a proponent could unlock the bonus to get 5 units on site. And if the proponent were interested in ground floor commercial, here's a third opportunity, which would be a mixed use quadplex with ground floor retail that again would take advantage of that 15-foot max front yard setback and really have a nice street wall to interact with Shaker Road. Next site is currently a single family home in the southern area of the district, just over half an acre. It's currently occupied by a single family home. You could say that this is an underutilized site given the potential value of a site like this. Under the current zoning would need to be something industrial because it's within the industrial zone, a development that could look something like this. Under the proposed rezoning, one scenario, this is an 8-plex apartment building that could be built on site that could really take advantage of the location of the rail trail and have a nice landscape connection to that asset. Here is with a density bonus, a proponent could unlock the ability to build up to 12 apartments. And here's an example that includes that mixed use component with the ground floor retail with 8 units above. So moving on to the Carlin building property, this is an example of a larger site within the industrial district. This is a 4-acre site, right? So you can see on the image here, most of you I'm sure are familiar with the site. You see a very large single family building which occupies the majority of the site. It's a building that's in really poor condition and deteriorating. So if a proponent were to purchase the site and build something new under the current zoning, then it would most likely be industrial or warehouse. And something like this would be allowable within the current zoning. This is a 65,000 square foot footprint building, which I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, is the max size of a single building within that district. So that you could, a proponent could develop something like this and have the space that they need for loading and for employee parking and for everything else, and still respecting those setbacks as needed, and even have some space for parking, for truck parking over there on the to the right of the screen. So under the proposed rezoning, a few scenarios here. This is a 61-unit apartment complex that could be built out with some ground floor retail and sufficient space for parking and certainly for open space as well. Building would only cover about 15% of the lot area. Scenario 2, really just a different configuration of multifamily housing. This is a mixed-use 47-unit apartment building with ground floor retail, and then in the rear of the site, 14 cottage-style residences, which is an increasingly popular type of residential development that could be built, just showcasing that you could really, or that a proponent could really achieve a mix of residential unit types on the site. And then here with the density bonuses, unlocked 81 units of housing. Last site is the Steve Graham acquisition site. Here's what's built out there today, a lot of open space and a few smaller buildings. This is what's allowable under the current zoning, right? Again, that 65,000 square foot building of industrial or warehouse space that could have some 4-unit sort of mezzanine envelope associated with it for offices and plenty of space for parking and for loading. again, maybe not to point out the obvious, but perhaps not exactly the type of development that you'd want to see in the town center, right? Maybe once upon a time when the zoning was first established, but now a little bit out of keeping with the more recent development that's come up around it. Proposed zoning, here's one redevelopment scenario. This is 108 units in a mix of unit types with some ground floor retail right along Maple Street that could take advantage of Maple Street running alongside of it, as well as the rail trail. Really, I mean, this would be a really exciting development opportunity for the right investor. Scenario 2, 108 units in a mix of unit types, including ground floor retail on Maple Street. So similar, just different configurations of unit types. And then third, with the density bonus, a proponent could unlock the ability to develop around 144 units in a mix of types. This shown here is largely apartment buildings. So conclusions. And what we found doing this study was at first, this is I think pretty important, is that the existing zoning, when you really get into it, prevents meaningful reinvestment on many of the parcels within the district. Several sites can't be redeveloped at all under the current rules. Well, let me caveat that. They couldn't be redeveloped without seeking relief from the underlying rules. Third, multifamily housing is effectively prohibited in the vast majority of the town center. Fourth, the Centertown district, the proposed rezoning, unlocks real buildable options on every site that was tested. And fifth, the rezoning would create opportunity, not obligation. In other words, obviously it wouldn't necessarily mean that these developments would happen, just that they would become possible. And then lastly, I sort of put a pin in the topic of the ground floor commercial requirements. So just to lean into that, it could work well on larger parcels, potentially with street frontage, where the developer would have the ability to do something like that. It's not practical on the smaller infill parcels. It can certainly unintentionally discourage redevelopment on small, but also on large lots, I would really say. But if it is applied, it should really only apply to parcels of a certain minimum size or something like that. So lots of information there. Oh, sorry, one last slide. Density bonuses, because that's unique to East Longmeadow. So just a few thoughts on that. Density bonuses really can be effective as an incentive to help advance the community's planning goals. Becomes a win-win situation from our perspective. We've advocated for density bonuses in a number of different communities and have seen them have a positive impact where they were deployed. Second, again, more impactful on large redevelopment sites. Large sites can reach up to 20 units per acre, and that small sites will naturally redevelop at the base 15 units per acre. And then, sorry, this really is the last slide, I promise. But what the Centertown district could do for East Longmeadow, if there was support for it locally, is to introduce housing types that don't exist in the center today. I haven't spoken a lot about housing production, but obviously there has been housing production's been too slow in the region and in the state. So this could help address that. Second, it can encourage reinvestment in vacant and aging properties, which there are several that we looked at. Third, it could support walkable, service-oriented town center of the type that's more popular with investors and with many residents these days. Fourth, reduce pressure to build on open land elsewhere in town. It's important. If there's opportunities to develop in the town center, a lot of developers are going to gravitate there instead of more peripheral spaces. Which could have which would be much better in terms of fiscal impact on utilities and services and things like that. And then lastly, could really create a long-term framework for a true community center that has the mixed-use vibe to it and the walkable, active district that most people think of when they think of the phrase town center. So thank you for listening. There was a lot there. We enjoyed taking a look at all these different parcels and the proposed rezoning, and happy to discuss or answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the presenter? Sir?
Can we see, can we get his face so we can bring him into the meeting?
He's up
He's up in the corner, right. Luke, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Could you stop sharing, please?
yeah, we don't need the. Perfect.
There he
Okay.
is.
I'm Marilyn Richards. I was the one who asked for, just share the information that my son and daughter-in-law have worked with VHB in the Watertown. I also, aside from being town councilor, I was on the planning board. So zoning has always been for me very important, very important. Thank you for this presentation. It gives us an idea of perhaps what can happen or perhaps what shouldn't happen. And I say that as respectfully as I can. We don't even have a bylaw yet. We did have one and we rejected it without prejudice. And we also haven't even approved the zone. The zone needs to go before planning and then the council, and we need to look at, do we really want our town center to be that large? And that's work for us in the future. I guess one of the first things I want to chat about is the proposed criteria for the Centertown district in terms of setback, side yard, lot coverage. Where did that information come from?
So for the existing districts, it came from your bylaws?
No,
And
I'm
for-
talking about the proposed. I'm sorry, I
that-
wasn't clear.
Oh, so it came from what we were given as what was at one point a proposed rezoning.
So
It was-
that came from us.
Correct. Oh, yeah.
Okay, that says a lot. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, all of the underlying proposed allowable land uses, parking requirements, dimensional standards, and everything else were handed to us. We were simply assessing what impact they might have on the ground.
Okay.
And just one other thing, and then I'll let other people speak if they have anything to say. With respect to how we are currently configured as a town center, traffic has been a huge issue, and it continues to be a huge issue. Was there any thought to that when you were making out these plans? Or, I can't see going forward with something like this until we address what's already there.
Yeah, so that was outside of our scope. VHB does a lot of traffic impact assessments, and there's so much science to it, as you know, that I wouldn't even want to venture to postulate based on the exercise that we prepared here. But so I couldn't speak too much to that.
Okay.
I'd have to have a much more advanced understanding of existing traffic patterns and what their impact would be. So I can't speak to that. That wasn't really part of our exercise.
Okay, thanks, Luke.
Would you mind coming forward?
Thanks for having me up here. So I just want to clarify that we had heard from the council that it was difficult to visualize what bylaw language looks like. And so before the bylaw that was proposed was pulled off the table, we had already gotten a grant and initiated this project to create some visualizations for what the zoning today looks like and then what the zoning in the proposed bylaw would look like. So these are not they're not plans. This is not a project. This is just like a visualization project so that you could see side by side today what the zoning looks like. And if we had moved forward with the proposed language as it was initially before you, these are the different housing types and projects that could come forward based on the language that was proposed.
And I apologize if I wasn't clear in my opening. That's what I was saying, that we had started this before we had withdrawn them. And that's all that's all Luke had to go on. So, thank you, Rebecca.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Tom, if I may.
Sure.
Let me back up.
Okay. I realize that this information was presented previously, and that's what the plans were drawn from. We've talked about, you and I have talked about proposed density in the town center. And it troubles me that every time I see something, it says 15 units, up to 20 units. The application for the grant said the same thing. And I'm not certain that we have done our homework enough to even consider those numbers until we know what kind of an impact we're going to have in our town center. You know, there's certain times where there's no traffic, and that's usually a Sunday morning. And then there are times when the traffic's backed up. We talk about creating a proposal that is more walkable in our community or in our town center. How's that going to happen with how our layout is right now? It's unsafe to walk in the town center.
And this is why we're having all the conversations, right? So when you talk to developers, they sort of need to get a certain amount of density for a project to be feasible for them.
So we're building it for developers and not for East Long Meadow.
No, it's not an exercise unless you find a happy medium where we can live with what a developer wants to build. If we come in with 4 units per acre, no one's going to build that. And then there's the potential that we end up with a warehouse scenario where the same amount of traffic is vehicles we don't want to be on Maple Street. And so this is why we're having the conversation of, is there, what can we, this is why we did the exercise, right? What can we handle? What do we want to see? And if the number gets low enough, it's sort of a futile enterprise. We should just go to all business and commercial so we get rid of the industrial, because no one's going to come do mixed use at 20% commercial and 8 units. Do you know what I'm saying? That's not going to pencil.
I know what you're saying. I guess I'm just struggling with, are we supposed to understand that what we looked at just now is something that we can handle?
No, it's informational.
All right, okay, I just want to make sure.
Based on language that we already withdrew.
I don't think any of us know what we can handle based on what has been done.
Okay, but the traffic coming off a site under the current zoning is not going to be much different. So if somebody were to put something on one of these particular parcels, there's still going to be traffic coming off the site. And it wouldn't be too much different then, right?
But when you put 20 units per acre and all those parcels will come into play in one way or another,
well, I think
that will create a different scenario.
If I was reading the room, that was part of the reason we pulled the bylaw, was that the density was too much.
Okay, well, I
True? I mean,
You
that's
read the room very well.
I thank you. And so that's why, and again, that's why I sort of was pleading at the beginning to sort of use your imagination, because Luke had no choice but to use what we gave him, and what we gave him was the bylaw language that we withdrew.
Okay, all right.
So
Sorry.
this is just simply what that old bylaw would look like on these 6 sites. And so if your feeling is that's too much, you already had that feeling, and that's why we withdrew. Does that make sense?
It does, it
Okay.
does, it does.
So this is where we're getting into this visualization part, where if you're thinking that's too much, when you see it, you say, we can't handle that much, well, then we're going to have to come back with a different number. And what I'm saying is, if that number gets too low, then the Centertown District is just not feasible for East Long Meadow, which is what we sort of talked about all the way back before we started 40R.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
If it doesn't work for us, we're not just going to push through a bylaw because it checks all the boxes from a planning standpoint or a development standpoint. If you don't think that this is going to work for East Long Meadow, but again, we're going to have to get to a number that may be uncomfortable for people to actually purchase the property and build the units. That's a fact.
So I guess I want to say one other comment, and I'm sorry, folks. When we first thought about the town center and we talked about what we were looking, we were looking at the industrial zone as being the most potentially egregious zone, if you will, because it's our most relaxed zone. And the criteria of development in that zone wouldn't meet our town center.
Right.
But where did housing come in to the town center? I mean, I don't know when that happened, when there was all of a sudden this push for housing. And I don't have any problem with housing, but it has to be the right kind of housing. It has to be the right balance of housing.
Yep.
And I don't get that feeling. I feel like we're caught in this roller coaster of, just pushing forward, showing us information. The first thing we have to do is address what our bylaw is going to say.
Right.
And then determine what's.
Well, and again, these are all helpful comments to writing the new bylaw. This is the conversation that we want to have, right? The residential came in because of the mixed use development. So we could keep our storefront, but also allow more, which would make it more feasible for a developer and allow our properties to be more valuable. And we could collect more revenue from those properties. And so it's a question of how big is too big? And if that number doesn't get to over too small, then we're not going to do it. We can't, because no one will build that bylaw. They won't. So, and again, I think I said this way on back too. If the only solution we can come to right now is change the I to B or C, well then let's do that yesterday. Because industrial, we know how we feel about warehouses. Right?
No, that's true.
Let's remove that from the playing field at minimum. And go, if you want business and commercial down there, let's zone appropriately.
And also, if a 50-foot building, industrial building, does not seem to fit in our town center, I'm also concerned about when you're building structures, how they reflect to the surrounding residential pieces that are right next door. Stacy's is a perfect example. I mean, there's a house right now, that's the residential property starts.
Yep.
And our zoning is a lot like that all around
Right.
the town center.
Right, and I don't even think we touched on that. I think Luke did a good job of talking about the setbacks and what those are, but there would also be a buffer there too, wouldn't there?
Well, there should be.
Right. That's
I
what
mean, not,
abutting a residential zone, there would be a buffer. There had to be. So even more limiting on that parcel. Like, somebody's going to have to use that building forever because you can't build anything else currently. And it's, at least it's grandfathered in now and you can use the space.
thanks for your time.
Thank you. This is what I mean. I just want to keep having these conversations because they're at some point, if we can't get to a level, then Centertown District can just not be a conversation, and we don't have to talk about it. Because or get rid of mixed use or whatever.
Okay.
Again, we can pivot if we have to pivot.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Other thoughts? Ralph?
Just one quick one. I noticed, obviously, recently we had Chase Bank go in, they purchased a property at 3.2 million, tore the building down, put up a new bank.
Yep.
So they got to be into that for 4.5 million.
Yep.
I guess my concern is if we say, hey, you can do residential housing, how many houses or units would you have to put on that parcel to cover $4.5 million cost?
Well, I think all the neighbors are mad at Chase for paying that much for the property, and probably the assessor too, but, yeah. And I don't know if.
And I guess that's part of my thought is, how many units are we going to have, if we choose to go that way? Would you have to have, just even to make it affordable enough to be able to put them in? It seems as though the prices in our town, especially in the business area and all now, have gone up so high.
Yep.
That the only thing that can afford to move in is, well, it seems to be banks, and I think we have 17 of them.
We do.
of which I've recently been made aware that Ramitos has sold.
I did hear that.
And I'm not sure if you heard, they are under contract to put a bank back there.
Okay.
Oh,
So seems like we are the town of banks. And again, that's what I've heard through the grapevine. We'll know coming forwards and, as far as that goes. But we have other issues, like the Ramitos. I don't know if Luke took into account the fact that there's a brook right at the property line and you have all the conservation issues and all. I know the parcel that you talked about on Shaker Road, the single-family house, the owner of that actually came in front of the town quite a few years ago to remove the house and put in a pizza shop. And the neighbors were so adamant. They were, they didn't want any changes, leave it a house, leave it this, leave it that. And I mean, these are all things that we have to work through. And, I was looking in the center, Golden Years property that you mentioned.
Sweet.
Well, that house, I know our historical commission is attempting to make that house is our oldest commercial property in town. And they want to make it historical, which would mean you couldn't even redo it. And these are all things behind the scenes that I don't expect you to be aware of, that throw curveballs in.
The other thing I would say is that probably more of a greater risk than a developer coming in and building a warehouse would be that no developer comes in to do anything on a site that doesn't allow multifamily that's 4 acres, and that you end up with the blighted properties that sit on some of those properties continuing to deteriorate year after year, potentially decade after decade, because the industrial market is very slow right now, and warehousing and commercial. That's great that some folks are building some banks, but a lot of the commercial real estate is just the demand isn't there, versus residential that has a gigantic unmet demand. You spoke about some of the financial difficulties of building housing. Well, the developers have different tools that they can use to make the pro formas work. So I think the greater risk than somebody coming in and building a warehouse is that some of those older underutilized parcels, including all the ones we looked at, if you don't shake up the zoning to allow more options, then probably nothing is likely to happen in many of them. And and some of the blight that we saw out there, if you multiply it by a few years, doesn't sound appealing. So I think that that might be one impetus or argument for the rezoning. But I'm just a consultant, and I'm just here to weigh in technically. But I just wanted to share that observation about the market.
So can I just follow up real quick? And again, this is just a generalized question. I see so many cities, whether they're in Massachusetts or elsewhere in the country, that are blighted, that are going downhill. They offer apartments in the city, they offer businesses, they offer all of this stuff, and yet they are in a lot worse condition than what the town of East Long Meadow is. So if they're offering all of that, wouldn't all of those cities be vibrant and running and going? And I don't think, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it necessarily is a factor on just changing the zone to allow this or that. I think there's a lot more involved, such as local politics and, people wanting to come to the community for different reasons, for good school systems and stuff like that. And that's the reason we're so, what's the best word that I want?
Unique.
Attractive for residents. I mean, I believe right now we only have 20 houses on the market, and most of them have been on within the last 24 days. It doesn't, obviously people want to move here, and banks want to come here.
There must be money here.
And I'm just curious, like I said,
just a quick response to what the first thing you said, which is that there's a lot of really blighted places that change the zoning and the investment still doesn't come. Well, sure, that's because they're so blighted. I think for the other reason you just mentioned, if if the type of rezoning that we've been talking about was actually carried through, there'd be a lot of investor interest right out of the gate, I think. And the question is that a good thing or a bad thing? It depends on your perspective. But I do think that a rezoning would have a tremendous impact on developer interest in the community. But again, that comes down to a judgment call. If that's good or bad, if there's concerns about fiscal impacts, traffic impacts, visual impacts, then that's obviously something that you would have to take seriously.
Thank you, Connor.
Just a quick question. Luke, you mentioned in terms of the requiring of commercial space on a certain size of a lot, is there like an industry standard or a recommendation of where that cutoff is?
Not really, because it's not really standard to say 10%. I think that's kind of a unique provision. So in terms of how large a parcel or a building would need to be to have that really make sense, I guess I can only answer just sort of common sense wise, which is that it would, if you're going to, or from a pro forma perspective, for example, on a case by case basis, say you built an 8-plex, say you built 8 apartments in an apartment building. It would be asking a whole lot of the developer to include some space in that building and get into the commercial landlord game. If they just want to build 8 units of housing, most folks who do that have no interest in trying to find a cafe to come into the building or trying to find a retailer and then getting into this whole other line of landlording. So I think once you get to the size of maybe 40 or 50 units, again, just answering from an anecdotal or common sense perspective, you'll see ground floor retail in buildings with 40 or 50 units. But something less than that, 16, 20, that's just so atypical. So I think that whatever size of a site you would need to get 40 units, and maybe that's 1.5 acres or 2 acres or something like that. Then I think you can start to discuss the idea of having that ground floor retail, as long as you embrace the fact that that's going to turn off certain types of developers, because they just don't want to do that. They don't want to take the risk, huge risk. Our office is in Watertown, and I live in Cambridge, and you see buildings that go up here, and the ground floor retail sits vacant for years with this decal on the window of somebody lifting weights coming soon. So if they can't attract tenants in a built up area like Metro Boston, you could imagine the risk associated with trying to do that in East Longmeadow, which is more smaller, lower density environment. So there's a great risk that you ask a developer to take on when you require retail space. So I guess that's just, I think, how a lot of people respond to that.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Sure.
So I think our thought was the ground floor is retail. So you build a retail establishment, but then you're able to offer, let's say, 2 apartments up above it. I think that was the real thought process, instead of, hey, we're building housing and now we have to put in commercial. I think we were looking at it just the opposite. We're building a business zone and we're also allowing, living upstairs.
Oh, gotcha. Yep. I mean, that type of project would certainly be great if you could do anything in the zoning to incentivize it or encourage it. I think requiring it can be difficult, but encouraging it or incentivizing it is probably a great idea. Because that achieves what you have in the center of town now is segregated uses, commercial over here, residential over there. To mix them up in any way would certainly be a fantastic achievement. So I think there's different ways you can approach it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any others? I think from my perspective, knowing, of course, that it was based on the previous language, but I think it helps show really kind of like the worst case scenario if you think that these are bad ideas anyway. I don't think anything would get more dense than what you're visualizing there. So I think from my perspective, it actually looks good. I think there's a lot to be desired out of that. And I think, as he sort of pointed out in the presentation, I think three of the biggest risks I see are A, doing nothing, B, you leave properties that people just physically can't develop because it doesn't meet our current zoning regulations if they wanted to do anything other than the building that's currently there, which I think we probably could agree in some of the instances, not to any properties owners discredit, are not exactly visually appealing and what people would want to see in their town center in the future. And then I think three, if we remember back to that presentation we had from Jeff Speck, if you're not really growing as a community, you're dying. And if we don't do anything here, we're just stagnating and kind of prolonging budget increases. And not to pick on our neighboring community, Long Meadow, but if we don't allow any of these kinds of things, I think the worst case scenario for the town is that you end up building single family home subdivisions on the very few amount of parcels we have left in town. You're gonna probably in the next 20 years be completely built out. And then what? Your tax rate goes through the roof. We can't afford to do any new projects unless you max out the tax rate. That's not really a good option for the town. And then if we're so worried about the town being affordable, people that have lived here, like my family, won't be able to continue to live here because the prices are going to keep going through the roof and there's no new development to offset it. So to me, we need housing.
Yeah, sort of to echo what Connor said, I liked seeing the visuals. Like, I'm a visual person, so it was kind of helpful to like just see how these things can be developed. And I also, with Ralph, with Marilyn, have that planning experience. So, we went through the mixed use development. We created a really great bylaw. But, unfortunately, the market doesn't really kind of support a lot of how it ended up being written out. If we do go down this road, we have to do something that, like, the market, maybe not tailored, we don't want to tailor it specifically to developers, but something that's like the market is going to use, because I don't want to go through all of this effort of developing some type of mixed use type activity in the center of town, and then it's like never used. Like, we have so many blighted properties like right now, and I kind of think that's like kind of crazy because we are such a desirable community. Like, I think this is a really wonderful community, but like on top of the properties that like are here, like Subway is also vacant now, so that they just recently closed. And I also don't really like the idea of like us having like 100 banks. I mean, a couple banks are great, but like the idea of like every property in the center of town and eventually becomes a bank, I don't think that's necessarily feasible in the long run. Obviously, for the people that are living here already, I don't think housing is a particularly huge issue unless maybe you're older and you're looking to maybe downsize. But it's a big issue in general. The state is currently operating at, I think it was roughly estimated, like we're 220,000 units below what we should have for a population our size. We had more housing production in the 70s than we have now. So it's not really an East Long Meadow centric problem, but it's a state problem that we are not really building housing to meet the population demand and then attract new population. Because obviously if you bring more supply into a community, like Austin, Texas, completely different community than ours. A lot of supply has been added over the years, particularly since COVID. Their rents or their properties, have sort of, the prices haven't gone up as steeply as some other places. So I think there is a need in the sense of maybe not with people that are specifically living here right now, but if we're looking to attract people. Because I think, as Connor said, like I really want us to be in a position where we're looking 10, 20 years, 30 years down the road, and that we're kind of growing at a healthy pace. Because if we do plateau, we're going to have costs that are going to continue to go up. And fewer people are having children as well. I mean, that's a fact. Fertility rates are down in every single state. This state, lost the fifth highest number of people out-migrated from the state in 2025. Now, that could be for a variety of reasons, other reasons unrelated to housing, other reasons unrelated to affordability. But, it is a need. And this town, the way we got here was we went from an agricultural-based town to a suburban town. And, you know, during that 1950s, 1960s, the town's population doubled. And, you know, what we're looking at here is, if we do it, I think in an effective, sort of very moderate type of way, we would be adding some units, but not shocking the system. Obviously, I think we do have to work out the kinks, because traffic isn't good right now. But if we were also to go to full business and hopefully develop all those blighted properties, that would also cause traffic issues as well. Because, you know, some of these, if they're smaller units, they may not attract as much traffic as like we put a restaurant in, or we put in a retail shop that may have more trips during the course of the day. I do understand, though, that I think there is hesitation amongst us. So if it's ultimately just business, I think that's fine. But I do think there is a need, and it should be something that is developed so that actually the market can utilize it. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Thank you. I think that reminded me of two other things, both in what you just said, but also in the presentation, that even when we look at, not just in terms of like setbacks and stuff, but even what our zoning allows today in those different districts, there's a lot of things that, sure, we have them now, but we're never really going to get more of it. Like, nobody's building commercial office space anymore. We still have plenty of vacant commercial office space in town. No one's going to put new stuff in any of these spaces, at least not in the foreseeable future. So unless we come up with like other commercial or business options that we're willing to let in those areas, they're probably just going to sit empty, and that's not a good option either. And then even when it comes to traffic, like in some ways, maybe we have some more traffic from different uses, but I think sometimes we also just have a bad memory of what traffic used to be like even 20 years ago. I mean, we have some commercial spaces that aren't fully maxed out and don't have the full workforce that they used to manufacturing-wise decades ago. And traffic was a lot worse when everybody, was let out at the same time. It doesn't exactly happen quite as strongly anymore. So not to say that we don't still have issues, definitely, but it's not as if it has significantly gotten worse compared to what things used to be 20 or 30 years ago.
There's also remote work, which, has taken a lot of trips down, maybe during the day for a lot of folks in town.
But if you look at traffic, when I was growing up, a family had one vehicle. They didn't have 6 vehicles sitting in their yard. A 2-car driveway was 1 car too many. Again, times change, things are changing. It's a matter of us finding ways to adjust and trying to look out 20 years to see what's coming. And it's difficult. Like we said, we spent over a year doing a mixed-use village district bylaw, which was going great, and then COVID hit, costs went up, and the developer said, well, this was a $100 million project that just jumped over 200 million. It's not worth trying to put it in at 200 million. And again, it was one of those where even at that time, you still had residents that were against it. They thought it was going to be too much traffic. Then you throw a warehouse back to them to change it, and now they really like the mixed use. So sentiment's going to adjust and change and move as it goes along. And we can create the best zoning in the world, but if a developer doesn't come in and buy that, $2 million lot and tear it down and put up a new building, guess what? It meant absolutely nothing what we just went through. It's going to be tough, and it's going to be a slow process, and it's going to take a long time. I think baby steps is the way to go.
I think with the traffic issue, traffic, I think, is brought up as a way to talk about the lack of people wanting to change. And traffic is not necessarily a bad thing. It's inconvenient, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. When I hear traffic, especially when it comes to the center, I think more pedestrian traffic. I think the center creates a divide in the town and doesn't allow for connectivity. I think if we're really going to get serious about the center district bylaw, we do got to get serious about doing something about the pedestrian access around the center. Not so much the traffic flow, a traffic count, but the flow of traffic and making it more walkable and more pedestrian friendly. I mean, just as a parent, I would, knowing my child is trying to cross a rotary, I would have a heart attack, especially around 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
I think it's, keeping what the traffic issue actually is, or what we're actually talking about is important. Are we concerned about the actual amount of cars at 5 o'clock, and then on Sunday there is no traffic issue? Or are we just concerned about walkability, pedestrian safety, making it more manageable? So if you're over at a coffee shop and you want to cross the street to your house, you feel safe doing so. That, I think, is important to keep the perspective on. So that's my thought on it.
So if I could perfectly segue into our next grant that is coming, is just that, the sort of what all that traffic looks like and wayfinding and what's actually happening with traffic and pedestrian traffic in our town. Again, my joke was always the first person that stood up at every planning board meeting just walked up to the mic and introduced themselves and just said traffic, and then sat down, and everybody was like, yeah. It has to mean something, right? There has to be some empirical data that we can act on, and that's next. So you'll have to sit through another presentation at some point in the next few months to sort of quantify that and try to figure out what we're doing and what we can do better. Not just the center, but in particular, but also the surrounding areas, because that sort of hub and that disconnectivity sends everybody other places, right? And so all that traffic goes somewhere. And so we just got to figure out how to manage it.
Great. Any other?
I just had a quick comment. I guess my biggest concern, I know somebody might have said doing nothing would be worse than, probably the worst option. But I also think if we came up with a center district that allowed housing, I think my concern is, was there 7 properties in here?
6.
6? Like, everybody comes in and does the same thing on all 6. And there's nothing in there to
The
prohibit
bylaw,
that.
the bylaw.
Right. So I think that's my concern. Like, I don't want this now to be the new bank, housing everywhere, banks and housing everywhere. So I think that's just and I don't know if we should, I know you're.
Yeah, Luke, are you still on the?
I know, I feel like, and I thought I was gonna be the last comment, but it sounds like Ralph has something to say as well. So I don't know. I feel bad for Luke.
No, if you guys are all set, I could drop off. But it was great to present to you and hear your thoughts. I think it's a really important conversation and a difficult one. And I know, we work in towns all over the place, and just the diversity of perspectives means that conversation takes a long time. But happy to contribute to the dialogue, and certainly happy to come back if it's ever helpful to continue the conversation.
We appreciate the effort, Luke. Thank you.
Luke.
Thank you, Luke.
Yes, thanks for having me. Thanks.
Or Luke.
Yeah, well, he wasn't so small. My comment was, they took 6 parcels as an example.
I know that.
Actually 154 or something, just in that district that we had self-created, which, obviously it's not been voted on yet, but.
Right.
But to your point, yeah, if all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, hey, let's do it like this.
And there's nothing to say.
I don't expect that.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Realistically, it'll take a while,
right,
but
Historically, it's worked in other communities,
Yeah.
like if other communities had probably done this. It's interesting.
But at what point,
you
if something
speaking
like that
aloud?
happens,
Oh, no, I was saying it was interesting just to see kind of all like the renditions of things. Like, it even seemed like some of these things like would be just hard from like that corner thing where the golden years is, and I'm thinking like there's so much elevation there. I'm like, I don't know if that could be developed at all. Maybe that's just like, I don't know, completely
Open space.
Open space maybe, because there's also that gradient and everything, whereas like Steve Graham's property in Harlan, like that could be maybe an interesting opportunity. Stacy's clearance, that's kind of on a weird parcel.
because it's just so tiny, and, you know, maybe that's an extension of just almost maybe single-family homes, because, you know, you have all those going there already, so.
I mean, it does raise an interesting point, though, that while the boundaries so far in the previous renditions were pretty wide in terms of the number of parcels it includes, it doesn't mean that we have to do that out of the gate. If there's something smaller that we could find that would be more apt for the council to come up with something, we could do that first.
Or even maybe in a specific area. So not even talking about the Romeo's area or Golden Gears area, but maybe one specific section.
Yeah, like maybe parts of Maple and Shaker or something.
As long as we sort of continue the conversation,
Yeah.
some sort of goal.
Right.
And not just, this is a bad idea, so let's not talk about it anymore. Like, anything, any suggestion in terms of, like, I know I always go back to like Pafumi's, I just drove by it, that's why I'm saying it, but like, that sort of small, like, pocket little thing.
That's 5 units and then a brewery and
Right,
Pafumi's.
right. And again, they had some sort of flagship businesses sort of already there to make that happen. And I don't know what that costs. I don't know if that was feasible. I don't know that, you know,
May not be now.
property ownership always becomes a thing, right? If you don't have to spend the 3 million to buy the parcel. Now you can maybe do a little bit more investment or a little bit less. Again, we just have to find whatever spot that is, and it doesn't have to be the whole district. We can have a district in the district around the center that we decide what goes there. Remember we saw the land that was created by that other layout of the Rotary, that we decide what goes there, and we sort of have parameters for that. And the rest of the zone is our standard density and whatever else, heights and whatever else we want to put on. But we can do whatever we want. It's our zoning, right? It just has to be.
No, you can't.
Why not?
Because the state has a say in it. I mean, you can't take one parcel and say, hey, we're going to change this. It's called spot zoning.
We're not going to spot.
And you just have to be careful, like I said. I mean, so to say we can do whatever we want, it's
Forgive me.
Within limits.
within limits, exactly. But I
We
do
don't
think,
spot zone anymore.
or any less.
Any less. No, that wasn't my point to say we can do whatever we want. I'm just saying,
Exactly.
it doesn't have to be the whole bucket that we created. It can be a different bucket. This could be bucket 1 and then bucket 2 and.
But I agree with what you
Right?
said, Tom, earlier about, like, I think taking the industrial zone away should be like priority number, like even beyond this other housing stuff like that, because it just doesn't make any sense really anymore in that area. How
The potential
it's
for a
developed.
very intrusive use on Maple Street is kind of scary to me.
Yeah.
And again, go ahead, sorry.
So I'm just thinking going forward so that we don't get stagnant and we don't just say, no, no, no. Take a good hard look at what was laid out as a center district, see if we like that, see if we want to make adjustments, because that would be an area where you would create a center town district. And in that area, then you could remove the industrial uses. Now, by removing industrial uses, it doesn't mean that if someone on Baldwin Street is doing an industrial use, that you automatically say, hey, you're closed down. That's not what it's saying. What it's saying is, going forwards, if the use changes, that this is what's now going to be allowed and not that. But the existing places are grandfathered, we call it grandfathered, pre-existing. But again, that may be a place to start, and with the bylaw, start with, instead of adding housing or whatever, remove what we don't like. You know, remove the warehouses and the industrial uses and say, hey, we're going to turn this into, you know, this for now. And then as you go down the road in years, you add to it, you know, the mixed uses. You say, you know, maybe in the Carlin area, hey, we'd like to turn this into so many units, but 55 and older, let's say, or, you know, a different area. But if you don't start somewhere, you can't get to the end project just by jumping there. There will be so many people that don't like this, that, or the other thing, they won't vote for it, even though 90% of it's good, the 10% that they don't like is real bad, so just my thoughts.
I think the only concern,
Good thoughts.
it makes sense. The only concern I have with that is if we start trying to remove too many things without offering new things that someone could do with their property, you're kind of leaving the existing property owners in a pretty bad spot, that you're taking away the value that they've accrued because they could have done these things, and now you give them no other options other than, we might do something 5 years from now.
Except the owners currently have the industrial use, and they're still gonna have that. They can sell their property, it's still
No, but I mean,
industrial
people that
use.
have maybe some empty space that they have yet to do something with, you're kind of taking away the ability of them to do things.
How many,
I would normally worry, except there's not a heck of a lot of empty space there. Again, there's vacant buildings, let's say like Carlin or whatever, but, I mean, like I said, I go through it all the time. I don't see a lot of, just an open lot that, hey, you can build this or that. But I do understand what you're saying, and it may be, we sit down and look at our commercial and our businesses and say, are there any others that we want to add in there that we want to allow? Hence, we got a question that.
So if, I'm just trying to figure out, sort of like a conversation direction in the office. And that's the requirements and the parameters of the mixed-use village district. Was that only because of where it was going to end up?
Yes.
Okay, fair.
That's why the size isn't all on that.
No, that's great.
I mean,
That's,
granted, it could have gone in other locations, like up at Elmcrest, they had 100 acres or whatever, Fenway Golf.
no, of course, there were other parcels, but it wasn't meant to be
Wouldn't have been
scaled down.
Zoning, but it wasn't really meant to be scaled down.
Okay.
And I think our planning director at the time had said that it would be basically a different mixed-use bylaw.
Oh, yeah.
For the center.
For the center, correct. And it was simply what Ralph had brought up, to give someone the opportunity to have a small scale, second story on an existing building and put 2 units there, or but not what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, and again, I just don't know that that's going to be feasible for somebody to do. Like, there's not enough return on investment to stabilize your roof and add 2 apartments. You're not, that return on investment is never going to happen. And so, again, this is what I mean. If we're not going to get to a point, and we're never going to get to a density point in this area of town, well, then we have to sort of shift the narrative and have a different conversation, and perhaps in a different area.
Sure.
Our zoning that we've had over time has really served our town well.
Yep.
Maybe not for this particular use, but our zoning encouraged certain uses, and the town was open for additional uses, residential uses going forward, plan unit development, adult residential development. We have lots of housing for the elderly and nursing homes. I mean, we have all kinds of housing in town, just not what this particular program wants.
What program would that,
this not program, but this approach. I get it. I know what we're trying to do, but I also look at the purpose of zoning. And one of them has to do with, no overutilization of the parcel, and also undue concentration of the population. Now, that's written in the very beginning of the purpose of our zoning bylaws. And I don't think that's something that we should just not consider anymore. It's there. Overutilization of, Jay LaFave came forward with a plan to do a mixed-use village where the depot is. And that was clearly overutilization of the property. And, it didn't work. I don't think it would have worked, because where was he going to put the parking? Underground.
Oh, and I totally understand your point, and you're right. The zoning has always worked for East Long Meadow, but that undo word has to change
Oh, I'm
over
not,
time.
I am
It
not,
has to.
but as I say,
Program, as you say, is an actuality of the population of the earth.
okay,
You know what I mean? Like, the people need different things. It's, we are a single-family dwelling
Four-bedroom community.
community.
Right.
We are. There is a population in town that is slowly needing something else because they can't afford that. And that's what the program is, to try to allow something else.
I realize that, I
And
understand.
so we just have to figure out how much that can be.
I'm not.
Because this
I'm
is a
not
real
opposed-
need.
I'm not opposed to that, as long as there's a balance in what we're offering.
So that's all I'm trying to get
We have
to.
offer the market at the top as well as at the bottom.
Right. That's all I'm trying to get to, is some sort of balance where it's effective and will be built.
So,
Right. And I think whether it's in the center or anywhere in town, we have to allow something, because even though we have some quite large buildings, they're all tailored to the elderly, for lack of a better
Excuse me.
Doesn't count anybody on up here, we're all young.
So I just have always found that a little odd, that we've only been, as a town, willing to allow dense building of housing when it's catered to an older age demographic, but everybody else we've left out in the cold in town. You can only really have a single-family home if you're less than 55 years of age. And I think that needs to change.
Well, it can change, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't change. And what you said in when you first started with your sentence about, it doesn't have to happen in the center, it can happen someplace else. Putting it all in the center is the problem that we're struggling with, because that's a confined area, and we're hearing all of these wonderful comments about walkability, and yet people still need cars, so we have to put them somewhere. And the proposal that we looked at had adequate parking for the people that live there, but I looked at one of the units and I said, what do they do at Christmas or Easter when all the family relatives come in? You know, you have to allow for, you can't be that restrictive in that kind of offering. You have to, look at the outside of the box stuff, that people are going to need their cars. We're not going to give up cars because we're moving into an apartment in center of town. Because why walk to a mattress store? Who needs a mattress? I mean, I'm just saying that. Who knows what's.
Well, I just had a burrito, I gotta lay down.
Yeah.
Come on.
But see, the thing is, we don't know what we're going to be walking to.
Right.
The other thing too to consider is, I think our zoning was built so well, but it was also built for an era when we had so much land. Like at that point in the 50s or 60s, which was probably the advent of a lot of this growth, there was tremendous growth, I think, all across the United States. So tons of units were being built. A lot of the prices were low, even adjusted for inflation. Now what we're going to be faced with eventually is, like what Connor said, we're not going to be able to build as many more single-family homes anymore, or at a point maybe it'll just kind of completely shut off. So if we do want to retain the growth, we'll probably have to start slowly introducing other things into it, eventually. But again, being very strategic about it. And that's like what every suburb is being.
What are you smiling about?
I feel like I'm Ralph tonight because I think this is the most I've seen. I will shut up.
So Connor, if I may, to your point, I think looking outside of the center of town for some possibilities is not a bad idea. I've been doing a lot of research and looking in New Hampshire. I'm going to call them mini homes, but it's a development of them, to where it's a development for more young people, single family, stuff like that. The houses are smaller. The developer was given some incentives from the town, and the parameters in order to build were a lot different. It wasn't, a 10,000 square foot lot. It was, I think they built 16 of them on a 1 acre area, and you're like, oh my God, how can you have 16 houses on 1 acre? And then you actually look at it, and it was pretty amazing. It came in into a circle, the houses were set up. They were set up in a way so that you weren't staring into the neighbors and all. I think a development like that in certain areas, or a few of them, years ago we had when all the houses were built behind Heritage Park. That's what they were. They were a development type. I don't say World War II because I think they were built in the 60s, but it was a housing boom that was needed. And so, all the houses were very similar size and everything, but they were built extremely fast, extremely efficient so that people could afford them. And I think that's an option. That's something to think about. I know like through CPC, we have the housing portion of it, which I recently found out that was pretty much only for new housing and not to redevelop and all. But that would be something where maybe we could use some of those funds as an incentive for someone to do something like this.
That's a good idea.
Again, there's a lot more ways to get what we want, and it's just a matter of coming up with them and then where.
What you were talking about is that we tried with cluster housing years back.
Yep.
Many years back. And the town wasn't interested at all. It failed at town meeting.
But I think that was for the entire town to allow it.
Well,
and
just
not
to
just,
no,
Was it?
the bylaw to take a parcel, an acre parcel, and do cluster housing and have, one drive coming in and then like
Right.
a wheel. People would the houses would just branch off. They were smaller and more affordable and I thought very attractive. That was one time people didn't agree with that. So that's something to think about too.
Any other thoughts? Okay. All right.
I think we all have a lot of
Thanks,
thoughts now.
Next, under new business, was accepting a Massachusetts general law for additional compensation for the town clerk serving as the clerk of the council. Tom, would you mind providing some background for this?
Yes, this is something we instituted a couple years ago that has, was it a couple years ago? That has a Mass General Law sort of attached to it. We have a lot of similar laws that we've created or accepted for similar things, i.e. the collector treasurer certification, the certified clerk one, and the board of registrars one, all in this chapter. That's J, K, and 108P. So this is just, we started, I think it was 2 years ago, providing additional compensation for the clerk being the clerk of the council. This is sort of just to memorialize it and have it recognized as pensionable income for the employee, as all the other ones are already accepted.
Ralph?
Well, go ahead. I think we talked about this before. Didn't we talk, we talked about this before and we understood that the charter specifically indicated that the town clerk would be the clerk of the council.
Yep.
And then the job description reflects that the town, that one of the duties of the town clerk is the clerk of the council.
Correct.
And, as far as compensation, I think that's important, absolutely. It's a lot of work taking care of us.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but the issue is, why do we need this? The charter directs what we're supposed to do. You create whatever you want to give your town clerk as part of her salary.
So at some point in my first year, we gave Jeannie
Yes,
this stipend.
yes, but not, it was
What?
more than that.
What?
No,
What was the stipend?
no, there was no stipend.
It was in her-
Specifically for this, because we've never adopted this. the stipend was given previous to you by Mary for additional work that she saw that was above and beyond. So it's always, at least as far as I've been on the council for 7 years, it was
Okay.
always agreed that this job was way more than a town clerk.
Yep.
And the salary should be compensatory to that.
Okay.
I don't think $1,000 to be the clerk of this council is anywhere near enough. And that's why 2 years ago, when I was leaving president, me and you had a talk, and I said, instead of doing this, give her a raise in her pay. And that was for Jeannie, and
That was always in the form of a stipend. And so I don't know if we had a miscommunication on that, but that's how it always was.
not to
so-
my knowledge, because I mean, it was a substantial. I
Yeah,
mean,
I know.
raise, and I understood that to be in her salary as
was not.
compensation.
So how does one
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, I'm sorry.
If it's considered a stipend, does it count toward retirement benefit?
So this is where this came up. The Hampden County Retirement Board did not recognize Jeannie's stipend as pensionable income because we had not accepted the general law. And so, again, apparently we've had some sort of miscommunication, but we have all the paperwork in HR. This was always a stipend because we have all the PAFs for additional compensation. And so to prevent this from happening to our employees in the future, I wanted to accept the law so that Hampden County would accept that additional compensation as pensionable income.
So if we choose not to give a stipend and you give that as a raise, wouldn't that be the same thing?
Yeah,
It would be.
And that
But I
was always
thought-
my understanding, because when we talked, I said, this position is very clear under the charter.
Yep.
Position is clerk and clerk, and that you don't give her stipend, you give her pay increase.
That's what I'm saying.
And if we think that, because otherwise, like this scenario that we just had where we analyzed everyone's pay,
Yep,
you would have compared clerk to clerk,
yep.
which would have been a lot less, and then you would have given $1,000 for being clerk of the council.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
more than that.
Compares, yeah.
It's definitely more than that. And again, it's always been a stipend. So I'm looking for a solution based on what we've been doing. And so if at whatever reason, when this first got instituted, was not instituted correctly, it's been a stipend, certainly since I've been here.
Do you give someone a stipend for something that's written in their job description?
When there's a mass general law that's attached to it,
But
and
we
it's
haven't,
allowed.
but we haven't
Yeah.
accepted it.
I know, but like, J is being a board of registrar. There's additional compensation. K is a certified clerk, additional compensation. In 108P or whatever this is, we accepted all these in like 2015. I'm guessing at some point, somebody said, that's not pensionable if you don't accept the general law, so we did. My understanding was this got instituted and we missed the general law. Because there's no reason for that. Well, I'm just telling you where we're at.
No, I just,
You
like I
can,
said.
I know you're saying no, but this is where we're at. So Jeannie was given a stipend for a number of years that is not pensionable income, and I guess that wasn't the intent, but that's how it was executed.
So did they didn't straighten it out, so she lost that.
Most likely. I mean, it was only,
Still,
no, it was more than $1,000.
It was, well, it was more than what the range is.
$500.
It's not what I remember, but that's okay. I'm getting old.
Just as a clarifying point, this would basically just make this money pensionable, but it wouldn't actually increase anything. It wouldn't increase compensation
Nope.
right now.
Not based on what we have in place.
but would
But
it
just,
restrict it? It says, not less
to
than
4.
1,000.
the general law restricts it, yes.
Yes, so,
I have a,
Maximum.
And I wouldn't, again, this is for a function for you. I didn't pick the number that it was.
we understand that.
Continued. And I wouldn't change it, certainly without your opinion.
I have a question.
Sure.
Thanks. Sorry. When we hired the new clerk,
Jackie?
intent to give the stipend in addition to the salary.
It was my thought that the stipend was set for the clerk by the council in a separate payment as a stipend. This is, yes, when Jeannie retired halfway through the year, we prorated it. And when Jackie's done with 6 months, I intended on giving the rest of the proration of that money.
If that money was always spent for the salary, or stipend,
Stipend, yep,
can't we just make it the salary?
we can.
That would
Again,
be my thought.
This wasn't my direction. This was a clerk of the council thing. So, yeah, I don't care.
Not a stipend when it's part of your salary. A stipend is given a one lump sum.
Right.
And it increases your pay and the tax is a little higher, so it's probably better as the salaries.
All right.
Instead of,
And if you actually
me.
look
Yeah.
forwards and you do a 2.5% COLA, well, that's part of the salary. So that 2.5% will be on that, where if it's a stipend, that 2.5%
It's
goes.
stagnant, right?
Okay.
and do we have other employees that get a stipend each year?
Well, there's stipend, those 3 general laws that we accepted. Yeah, the collector treasurer has one,
I mean,
Jackie
it's a
gets
good idea to kind of
registrar.
about,
With that, sorry, I don't mind to jump in.
No, go.
Most of those positions can be 2 people doing them.
Jeez.
The
So you
clerk,
can have a collector and a treasurer.
you could.
Or you can choose to have one person do both jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I always understood the stipend, because like in John's situation, he works for the state, he's not allowed to accept this.
That law reads that you're certified in one or both of those. It's not a stipend for having both positions. That's not the way the law reads.
I want to make sure that we can compensate this position. Yeah, even $4,000 to be the clerk of the council, because I got to tell you, being the clerk of this council is worth a lot more than $4,000. And I'd like her pay to
All right, so,
be that.
great.
Anna?
That's certainly going
I
to
would
be
like to
actionable.
finish my sentence before Ralph cut me off.
Otherwise I'd forget.
I didn't realize, because I would have elbowed him.
It's okay. My statement before was that if there are three other people that are getting a stipend for their extra duties, should we look into switching it over to just be part of their salary?
Well, it's for certification.
Oh, okay.
So that's,
So there's another,
But-
the middle one is for being a certified city clerk. And I don't think you can even take the test unless you're a clerk for 3 years or something. So that, it's not for additional duty, it's like a certification. All right?
Okay.
All right. Well, then,
So do you want us to make a
No.
motion to,
no, me and Jackie can work it out.
$8,000, Jack.
I'm just,
No.
again, go,
Make it even.
adding that, I don't want that.
Round it up.
In an effort to be consistent with all the other laws that we accepted for other stipends, so that it would be pensionable, I just figured, well, this is the way the other 3 are done, so to be consistent, we'll just accept the other law, bada bing, bada boom. If you don't want to do it that way,
You need to speak.
it's all going to be the same.
Will that help, Judy?
I didn't want to cut you off.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. She asked if we accept it, will that help Jeannie? I don't think so, but
No, probably not.
probably not, but.
I guess what was the answer for me was what the charter says. The charter makes the position of clerk of the council as part of the job.
Right.
And so I feel like that's all said and done, and then you recognize within her salary, what she should deserve because of all of her hard work.
Fair enough.
Is up to 10,000 now.
I got to redo the budget now. Yeah, listen, I was trying to make that additional compensation pensionable. And if you'd rather just do it that way, then done.
Well, it's pensionable, right?
Well, it will, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There's one of 2 ways, either that way or accept the law. If you don't want to accept the law, then we'll do it that way. No, no worries.
When it comes to the difference between salary and stipends, when we see it on the munis reports, are those just all lumped into like one line item? So we wouldn't see that there's differences, or does that
If
get?
it's paid as a stipend, it would be in that. We've been trying to eliminate them. There were stipends for a whole lot of things when I started. We're trying to just bake them into whether it's a union contract or salary or whatever. If they exist now, it would be on that sheet because stipend has a separate org number. Either way accomplishes what I put this on the agenda for, so it's completely up to you.
So if I'm understanding, it sounds like the consensus then is to not offer it as a stipend, but increase the regular compensation.
Yeah.
So therefore, in this upcoming year's budget, we would really see the numbers.
Well, they would just be.
Yeah, flip-flopped.
The total budget's, well, will still be the same. It'll just
Yeah.
be, instead of a stipend, it's in there.
Still in the salary portion. Congratulations.
Thanks. 10,000 it is.
Take it easy.
Play the house.
Not more than
Love it.
10% for the.
She got to kick some to Jeannie.
Any other discussion?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Action items for our next meeting, depending on the timeline for posting, we'll have to work it out with Jackie. I don't know if we'll meet the publication deadline. I can't remember if we missed that or not, but whether it's the next meeting or the first one in April, we'll have the second reading of the right to farm bylaw that we had the general bylaw committee met last night about. We'll also have public hearings for the CPC projects, either, again, pending the publication deadline for that.
Yeah.
We'll have the budget presentation. We will maybe have some more on the oil tank if we need transfers now, or if that waits till later in the year.
Yep.
Otherwise, that's all I have penciled in. We've covered a lot of.
That's all.
I just have
far.
one more.
Sure.
I know we've had this conversation before. I got a call the other day. A lot of the youth sports teams now they've moved to nonprofit status. I'm getting more and more calls from them because they're doing their own fundraising, and they're trying, I think, to solicit businesses, the banners
Yeah.
on fields and stuff. So they're trying to, it's no longer going through the rec department, so they're more and more soccer, basketball, football, and I'm missing one. They're all baseball. I think softball. They're all now in like a nonprofit status, so it's easier for them to raise money. So so I've gotten a couple calls recently about fundraising, being able to place banners in places. So I don't know if it's something that as a policy, want to revisit. It's a little cleaner, I think,
I like to revisit all the policies.
but I have
So,
fielded a couple of those calls.
Advertising banners.
Yeah.
So the way they do it now is they're like temporary. They're up there in the game and then they take them down.
When we had that discussion, I'm sorry, Kathy, go.
I think in the school side, I think there is a policy about banners on the field. So you probably should start there and decide what's the most prudent way to go where you're.
My next tackling.
Because if there is a policy, it would reflect the fact there was concern about who gets to advertise. There had,
And there's
sports are one-
parameters too.
But if we, if one of our gun shops in town wanted to put a banner up, that was.
Right, and there's parameters.
It really gets into
Exactly. Well, that's
really what it gets into.
Signed by.
We-
Signed by law.
Yeah.
The last time we talked.
That's really what it gets into.
2 budget cycles ago, I believe, when
Okay.
Sarah Trulio was still on the school committee, and that was one of her recommendations to the council when we were evaluating funding sources that year, was to look
Banners,
at
yeah.
the banner stuff on fields.
so if these I think it's baseball, soccer, you said, are now separate 501c3s. That means the money's not going to the town. That means it's not a town banner. It's a separate entity that would be looking to put advertising on town property. Currently, we don't even allow that, limited with our own rec department, and the money that's generated goes to the rec department. In that situation, the money generated would be going to a separate 501c3 entity. First, I'm not sure why the different teams are now breaking away from rec. I thought the whole point was, a few years back, was to bring all of those oddball 501c3s into one house in the
Didn't
rec.
take off. Didn't take off. The sports like to be by themselves.
There's different grants out there, and there's a whole.
No, I do understand that. I just, but each one now is making money for their own events, and they can choose individually how the money's spent, where it's spent, without any town oversight. And I think that was part of the issue, especially if you start allowing them to advertise on town property.
Well, I know like one of them per se is trying to raise money to reseed a field and to resod it. So there's some benefit to the town. So that's what they're looking to do. But if you're going out there raising that type of capital, they're trying to sell something. That's what the conversation is.
Yeah.
But we can definitely visit.
Yeah, we can have, I have a lot of conversations with a lot of rec parents, coaches. We're trying to find ways to help, but again, we run into some legal problems, we run into policy problems, which we can talk about, but there's some legalities in terms of, it's still town property, so what happens on town property is sort of governed in a certain way under the law. And so it kind of ties the town's hands in terms of, sure, you can operate as a 501c3 and have an agreement with the town and pay your portion, but run your own league, which we're doing with baseball and softball. But it's still town property, and whatever happens on town property should happen a certain way, which I've had, our attorney would say, I've had way too many conversations with him about this, but trying to sort of facilitate some of this, but it's pretty difficult.
I know it's not easy, but I'm just saying it's happening more and more. It's pulling up a lot. If we want to revisit, I'm just throwing it out there.
No,
I know like there's big interest in like the Birchland 11v11 field. It's less than desirable condition, and there's a big push to redo it, and if we can bring money into, it's not town money to redo it, and we can put some banner up.
Yeah, yep.
Wow.
And again, like Kathy alluded to, that's a school use form, so I probably wouldn't even see that.
But
Look at me like that.
it would be,
You should, but yes.
I don't know that I would object to the 501(c)(3), but if banner is going to reside on town property, then there are parameters that should be naturally in place for a municipality and school fields, and that would prohibit any banner promoting alcohol, tobacco products, weapons. So I mean, with all respect to the gun store owners, they couldn't advertise.
And, not to quote my attorney again, but anytime you say you can't do that, but you can, we're opening up some serious liability.
Yeah, I don't want to.
And this is where the yes to everyone or no to everyone comes in, and I always say no. I know I'm a fuddy-duddy, but my answer is always no. But nobody can say you're treating me differently. Everyone's a no.
Well, what if the organizers of the baseball, whatever groups have the 501(c)(3),
Yep.
wouldn't it be reasonable to assume they would not be going after a business that would advertise tobacco or alcohol or firearms.
It's a reasonable assumption, Kath. I mean, yeah. Again, the parts of this argument have always sort of come back to, you have a temporary sign, i.e. it's just up while you're playing on the field, that doesn't violate the sign bylaw. But like when we went through the site plan with the high school, we didn't let them have an LED sign because it's not allowed. Just because it's the town of East Long Meadow doesn't mean we allow it. So if you're putting up a sign that's going to stay there, that's erecting a sign, and that is just expressly not allowed.
I don't want to keep this conversation going. It's just an action item section.
It's just an action item, sorry, but yeah. No, this is something that, Jim's right. People bring this up
It's
all the
quick.
time.
It's very quick, and it's to Tom. So if these entities are separate now from the rec department, are they renting our fields?
They have a agreement in which they provide monetary every year to the.
And the only reason I was,
Well, that's just coming from our pockets.
I knew Tri-County used to, and I knew there was some other,
Yeah, they have
They-
to space.
my
Yep.
question, okay.
Yep, it's a
You're right, this
win-win.
wasn't on the agenda, this was just a.
I'll just say, hey, can we take a look at it in the future?
Yes.
And that's actually allowed, I think there's a,
Okay. Any other action items? Any motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and we're adjourned at 8:41.